Colleen Taylor, backstage at TechCrunch Disrupt, San Francisco 2013. We're live with Jeff Weiner, who just came off stage from a fireside chat with TechCrunch's Eric Eldon. Thanks for joining us back here.
Yep, thanks for having me.
And there's one question that I wanted to ask you. From back in April, you wrote a blog post that a lot of people talked about how you personally take between 90 minutes to a couple hours every day for yourself, where you don't have any meetings, and this is a very difficult thing to do as a CEO of a large public company.
Yeah.
Tell me, what do you do during that time period that really centers you and allows you to think?
Yeah, the post you're referring to was entitled "The Importance of Scheduling Nothing," and it's something I've been doing now for a couple of years, and started to notice that in this current role, there's a lot of demands in terms of time, and that if you're not carving out enough time to just think, or for impromptu meetings, or to get out from under your inbox, it can really start to compound, and it gets worse. And I think everyone can kind of relate to that in their own way. So started this practice where would carve out buffers. I call them buffers. And they're grayed out portions of my Outlook calendar. So if you saw a bunch of gray, it's not a mistake. The printer didn't break. And it's really time to do just that. It's to think, and to think strategically, to think about where we ultimately want to go, to think about the things that take time, and you don't want to have interruptions or constant context switching, which just limits your ability to be more effective. It's time for coaching when people need coaching. You can't always schedule that ahead of time. You know, if someone's experiencing a problem and it's a coachable moment where you can share with them an experience you've had that they can then utilize themselves, so they're in a position to better scale, and more importantly, that they can coach their teams, that pays huge dividends. So those are some examples.
Great. And about a week ago, LinkedIn filed that you're raising a bunch of money, about $1 billion, a little bit more than $1 billion.
Bunch of money was the technical term.
Bunch of money is the technical term, yeah. But obviously it's boilerplate language when you file that sort of thing, where you say it could be used towards acquisitions. And I think that a lot of people perked up at that moment thinking, ooh, who could LinkedIn buy? Can you talk a little bit about what your M&A strategy is, what you look for in potential companies that you might look to acquire?
Sure. Just for additional context, this follow-on offering where we raised north of $1 billion, to your point, was done to further strengthen our balance sheet. You know, one of the things that we've recognized over the last several years is that the opportunity ahead of us in the potential addressable market in aggregate is even larger than we originally anticipated, and we think we're as best positioned as we've ever been to take advantage of that. We wanted to have the right balance sheet, so we'd always be in a position to pursue the right strategic path should it present itself. And so, you know, the company's generating strong cash flow today, operating cash flow, free cash flow, and you know the old adage, the best time to raise money is when you don't need it. So there was no specific acquisition in mind. But when it comes to our acquisition strategy, to date, we have focused on smaller acquisitions, and that was done very purposefully because it's easier to integrate smaller acquisitions. It's been our experience. And really, it's all about the integration. That's ultimately going to tell the tale on how much value you're able to generate from those acquisitions. And so we focused on talent acquisitions. We focused on smaller companies that could help accelerate our roadmap, that had proprietary technologies. And going forward, perhaps those acquisitions will start to get larger, but there's nothing prescriptive about it. And we're going to continue to keep an eye out on those potential opportunities that we think can create more value.
That's good. And you talked on stage really briefly at the end about how people can incorporate their portfolios into LinkedIn, and how you've already started to work with this a bit with patents. And one small word that you said was so interesting. You said code. People might be able to someday embed their code into LinkedIn. Now, when I talk to a lot of programmers here just in my job at TechCrunch, they kind of look at GitHub as their LinkedIn. They say, this is who I am, this is my resume. Have you thought about a partnership with GitHub? Are you going to somehow get those programmers to create another portfolio on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think there's going to be many different ways we can pursue that opportunity, and it's not specific to code. We want to make sure that any professional, anywhere in the world, has an opportunity to put their best foot forward. And that's going to happen explicitly by sharing your experiences, your skills, your ambitions. It's going to happen implicitly through the work that you're doing. And so most recently, we've allowed for people to share rich media. And it's made an enormous difference. It really brings to life what somebody's all about. It's one thing to know that someone's been in a specific job for a long time when you're looking and evaluating their candidacy for a senior position per se. It's another thing to actually see them give a keynote at an event like at TechCrunch Disrupt and hear their vision and see the energy with which they're presenting. And that can make a big difference. So, whether it's code or whether it's a photographer's portfolio, ultimately we want to be in a position where you can put your best professional foot forward, and that may happen through partnerships. It may happen through our own platform.
Great. And last question here I want to ask. When you were getting ready through the process of going public, LinkedIn has had probably one of the most successful tech IPOs of recent years here. When you were going through that process, I'm sure you had some thoughts about how things were going to be different once you were a public company. Now that's a couple years ago. Has there been anything that's not been what you thought it would be, or something that surprised you about what it's like right now to be a public company?
To be honest, the biggest surprise since we've been public is that there were no big surprises. And I'm not just saying that, it's the truth. And I think that has a lot to do with the preparation that went into becoming a public company and making sure we had the right team in place, making sure we had the right processes in place, the right infrastructure. And I think most importantly, understanding who we were as an organization and investing a lot of time and energy in our culture and values, codifying those culture and values. They were a part of our registration when we filed, and most importantly, manifesting our culture and values every day. And I think that's made a huge difference.